Today in our northwest suburb of Chicago 5B zone, I am ready to dig up dahlia tubers. First, I gather my crates. I label them to make sure that I don't get the tubers mixed up. We did have a light frost hit, so these tubers are ready to be dug up. Next, I take my pitchfork and I begin to dig the tubers out. I try to be as gentle as possible. I don't place the pitchfork directly on top of the tubers, but more to the side so that I'm not breaking these tubers as I'm pulling it out. Note that I have about a 6 to 8 inch stalk on top of these tubers or above these tubers so that I could easily grab the tubers out of the soil. I also have a tendency to try to shake off some of the excess soil. Sometimes it's hard to get that excess soil off because it is wet. So due to time and schedule, many times I cannot finish digging up all the tubers in one setting. So I will work each day to slowly dig up different variety of tubers. Now my tubers are ready for a good washing. So I bring in a hose that has good pressure and I am ready to wash off the excess soil. And I do that just by spraying down the tubers. I like to keep my crate on top of or above soil so that water is not running all over the place. It does tend to get really wet. Next, I'm gonna snip off any excess roots so that I can easily store these tubers. And as you see, on the bottom of the tubers, we have long roots growing. If possible, I'll try to divide them naturally without cutting them at this point. And then I'll take my sharp shears and then I'll just start snipping the roots off. Now, it's okay if you go a little bit into the tuber. It's going to be fine. It's not going to damage the tuber. And then I take the stalk off so that I could easily plant this again in the spring. Once I've cleaned the tubers, now they're ready to dry off. And since temps are dipping real low, I'm letting them dry off in my garage up to 5 days in 50 degrees temperature. Next, I take some vermiculite after 5 days, of course, and this is what I'm going to be storing my tubers in. So first, I am opening the bag, and this is a fine vermiculite. I've also used vermiculite that was a bit more coarse last year, and it worked just as well. Next, I'm going to take a lawn bag, a paper lawn bag, and those are my tubers in the crate. They're all dried up. And they're not shriveled. I mean, it's just there's not much moisture left on them. And then I'm going to take a fairly big bucket. I'm using a sand bucket in this case, and I believe I put in about 3 to 4 buckets of vermiculite on the bottom of the paper bag. And next, I'm going to take my tubers, place them carefully on top of the vermiculite, and once I've emptied my crate, I will begin to add more vermiculite on top of these tubers. My goal is to make sure that the bag is not too heavy. So if I do have too many tubers of one variety, I would split the paper bag or bring in another paper bag. So make sure that you write on the bag what variety of tubers you have in that paper bag so that things don't get screwed up or mixed up in the spring. Next, I will naturally just close the bag as best as I can. And then I'm going to store this in 50-degree temperature in my garage on a shelf. Just please note that it's important to make sure rats and mice don't get to it. And so far, I've not had any problems.